So the Grand Exchange tax came out yesterday, and one of the most asked questions by far is, how is this going to affect flipping, or is flipping dead? So I've spent the last day or so having a look at the market, looking at the prices, looking at how much the taxes are affecting things. So today I'm going to be discussing what flipping is going to be like post the GE tax. I'm going to be testing out some flips and just generally giving you my opinion on what methods I think are going to work better going forward, which ones aren't going to work anymore, and just how I think I'm going to adapt going into the future. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, if you do, really appreciate a like on it. It does help me out tremendously. Gets my video out there and recommended to other people. Thanks for watching, and let's get started. Okay, so let's start off at the top here. So as of yesterday, there is now a 1% tax on the Grand Exchange for whatever you sell. Let's say we don't need these Eternals anymore. We'll go ahead and pop these on the Grand Exchange, sell them, and we're going to get a 1% tax on whatever the finished sell price is. So we dump them in here for $29.64, but we're also going to lose what looks like $29K in tax money. Now, based on the margins that you would get before the GE tax, is flipping dead? Because normally you wouldn't really get much more than a 1% margin on something like a Spectral. Well, not exactly. If we go look at the vast majority of items, the margins have expanded by at least 1%. Now, we do have to keep in mind that a lot of items are really volatile right now due to the item sync aspect of this, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, let's have a look at a somewhat unrelated item to any of the item syncs. Here is the Dragon Pickaxe. Now, previous to this, often you get a margin of 30 to 50K on it, somewhere around there. And you can see how tight this line looks up until the GE tax line, which is very conveniently plotted on the graph. A little while after that event, and all of a sudden, the margins start to widen. And in the majority of cases, the margin has widened by at least 1% to accommodate the new tax. For example, now we have a margin of what looks like 120K, so that's actually significantly higher than you'd get before. Another item here, we have the Dragon Enter Crossbow, which has risen to a margin of 1.4 mil, which means even after the tax, the margin is a bit higher than it was before. We have the Prayer Potion, which has a margin right now of 220 GP, which is very high compared to what it would have been before. We can see that in pretty much all cases, the margin has grown. Now, before I get further into this video, I want to take a second to thank Mecha Arena, which is the sponsor of today's video. Mecha Arena is a fast-paced 5v5 shooter where instead of guns, you pilot mechs. There are a ton of different mechs to choose from. Some of them are quick, some can jump, and others have powerful weapons. But once you're ready, hop in and battle other players on one of over 20 maps. Blowing up other people in Mecha Arena is actually really satisfying. The controls are very intuitive, and there are tons of different ways to customize your own mech to make it personal to you. The game's really easy to pick up, and after a quick 5-minute tutorial, you're pretty much ready to go. This month, Mecha Arena is also running a charity event. For every mech that you destroy in-game, some money is going to be donated to charity. The goal as a community is to destroy 1 billion mechs, which would raise $100,000 for the Able Gamers charity. Also, there will be prizes for all the players that participate, including limited edition merch and even a grand final prize where 10 winners will get to pilot a real-life mech. Now, if you want to give Mecha Arena a try, don't forget to click the link in my description or click this convenient QR code. By using my link, you're going to get 50,000 credits, 3 gold crates, and an exclusive event skin. So go check them out, and thanks once again to Mecha Arena for sponsoring today's video. Now, one thing that is definitely going to be much different going forward is price checking. Now, let's just take an example item here, the Kodai Wand. The Kodai Wand right now is worth 100 mil, and currently it has a margin of around 1.3 or 1.4 mil on it. So while a margin of 1.3 mil sounds good, well, here's where the issue kind of starts. So a 1.3 mil margin minus the tax would leave you with around a 300K margin, which, you know, isn't terrible for a Kodai Wand. Previous to the tax, I might go for that. I would just go ahead and price check one, and then we'd be good to go. You would lose 300K, but you would have 7 more quantity to make that back, which you could easily do. However, with the tax, that becomes a big issue because the actual return on your investment, including the tax, is very low here. Even though you're getting a reasonably good margin, you won't really be able to price check this. For example, if you go ahead and price check it, you're going to lose 1.3 mil on it, including a tax, which means to make your money back, you would need to profit off of around 3 or 4 more Kodai wands, which will only leave you with very thin margins to profit here. So the more expensive the item, the less viable price check-in is going to be, and I imagine most items over 10 mil, people are just not going to bother. They're either going to guess or just use third-party tracking software like GE Tracker. And in addition to that, rechecking margins is probably going to be a no-go as well. So obviously, really expensive items, you're never going to price check those, but what about mid-tier items? Well, I decided to do a little bit of test flipping with some in-market mid-tier items. For example, we have the Toxic Blowpipe. That was my first item. Quite a solid margin on it right now of 100k, and even considering the tax, that's quite good. So we're going to try buying the Toxic Blowpipe. We're also going to have a look at the Dragon Pickaxe. The margin looks pretty good on that as well at around 60 or 70k. Next up here, we're going to try the Krill's Leather Top, which should be a very in-market item. Has a margin of 100k on it, very good. And finally, we're going to look at the Toxic Trident. So yeah, one thing hasn't changed. I have immediately been undercut on pretty much everything. But what do you do here? You can't really endlessly recheck margins because every time is a much bigger hit. So even on less expensive items, I think price checking is going to be kind of an issue, which means patience is definitely going to be required here. So after around half an hour of waiting, I've finally been able to close out on some flips. Now, some of them are profitable and some of them aren't. We were able to retain a pretty good margin actually on the Blowpipe. In the end, we sold them for around a 20k margin. We just randomly bought and sold a Vigor's Chain Mace without checking the margin. We sold it for 89.79 and we bought it for 88.45, so 150k margin, pretty similar to what you'd get before. We have the Ornate Maul handle. I just went ahead and price checked that a minute ago. We bought them for 879k and sold them for the minutest of margins, 2k each. So in the end, pretty thin margins, but honestly, this isn't that much different than it was before. The 1% tax does add a bit more risk to everything, but this is kind of just the way things had been going already with the advent of real-time pricing data and just flipping becoming more and more popular throughout the years. This kind of flipping is very competitive. Not to say that people can't be successful doing it. You may have noticed personally, I've been moving away from this in general. I used to do like 1 hour flipping videos pretty often, but now I don't really do those anymore, and my flipping series really now revolve around longer term merches, which I've been finding a lot more satisfying and less frustrating. On pretty much every item here, I got undercut within seconds, and now with the GE tax, it's going to be even harder to recheck that. Now, in my opinion, flipping is always going to be possible. This is just another hurdle along the way. I think we can agree that the market has adapted already, and there are loads of profitable margins right now. So previously there was a lot of competition flipping, but now there's going to be both competition and a significant amount of volatility all the time, because overall the volume is going to drop on the Grand Exchange. That's just inevitable. On cheaper items, not much is going to change, but as you get more expensive, less trades are going to occur, and that's not necessarily because everyone is doing it outside of the Grand Exchange. I don't actually think that's happening that much. I was very curious to see how many trades were happening in Varrock or just around the Grand Exchange, and there are some, but who's to say how many of those are legit or just scams? No, people are just going to use it less overall. They're going to be selling gear less often. There'll be a lot less people flipping these expensive items, so just in general, the volume will drop, which means the margins will probably get larger, but also extremely volatile. For example, here we have an Elysian. It's a bit too early to say exactly how much volume is going to drop from this tax, but I expect it to be significant. Obviously, right now, there's a ton of people buying items due to huge fluctuations due to upcoming content and item sinks, but already I would say the volume looks very low on the Elysian. Like in the last 5 hours, there's only been a handful of transactions, at least through the Grand Exchange. So is there still opportunity? 100% yes. Is it going to be more challenging? Probably. So in the end, how effective is this Grand Exchange tax? Well, actually, we have a fairly exact answer for this. A couple hours ago, the OSRS wiki tweeted that in the 9 hours since the Grand Exchange tax has been added, roughly 10 billion coins have been removed due to the tax, which would extrapolate to around 10 to 15 trillion per year. So that means roughly per day around 25 billion GP is removed due to the tax. So far it has definitely been quite effective. So for some final thoughts here, I think flipping is going to be different. And certain aspects of it are going to be a lot more competitive, mainly cheaper items, but more expensive items may actually have a bit less competition. Personally, I'm going to be continuing on with slower flips and merches. I just find the current meta for high volume flips to be a bit exhausting, to be honest, but that's just me personally, and there's definitely still money to be made there. And overall, although my channel is literally called Flipping Old School, I still think the health of the game is more important, and I really do think this tax is healthy for the game's long-term future. Anyway guys, that is going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Now before I go here, I want to give a giant thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. Thank you so much to Alejandra, Sejuani's Flail, Ocelot, and Kush Patel for all being subscribed at the Dragon tier. Thank you so much as always, guys. Also a giant thank you to Sir Rojas, Ryan Shady, Mexos, Base Titch, NDM001, and Yo-Yo Sub 89 for all being subscribed at the Runite tier. Appreciate it, guys. As always, if you are looking for another way to support the channel, becoming a YouTube member is a great way to support me directly. You'll get immortalized in all of my future videos, get a custom role in my Discord server, and you get access to my video release schedule as well. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.